Ad-Hoc short-term rental committee to order, and if you will reflect in the minutes that the Councilman Brennan and Councilperson Herbert are with me also. This is a special call meeting to make some corrective amendments to the short-term rental ordinance that we passed earlier in the year. When you pass any new legislation, there's opportunity to come back a little bit later and correct some of the things that we might have overlooked, although we worked on this thing for a year and a half. A couple of things are up. You have in your packet a copy redlined with the changes made to the existing short-term rental. The first major change in this ordinance is to remove the requirement for parking spaces to be designated in commercial areas, in areas other than residential areas. We still retain the requirement that if you're in a residential area, you have to have at least 2 cars on property designated for short-term rentals. We found that, number one, the city has already removed the parking requirements for businesses that have 7,500 feet or more. And number two, several of our people that want to get permits are in existing short-term rentals or even long-term rentals that do not have public parking in the commercial. They're in commercial areas. They're downtown. So that will take care of that problem. A couple of pages over, there are 2 changes made. We had put in the original order the term affidavit signed by the property owner. Affidavit is a legally defined word that usually means you have to have a judge or notary public sign the document. What we meant is that they would swear that to the best of their knowledge that they are telling the truth in their application and meeting all the requirements of the ordinance. And right below that, we have removed the requirement that we have a copy of their general liability insurance. Most of the platforms that are doing short-term rentals provide $1 million worth of coverage for their people that are using that particular platform. And this eliminates the requirement to have that with you. It'd be a little bit difficult for us to collect that liability insurance when it's provided by the platform that they're using. And the final amendment that we have is the last page where we are putting in a requirement that if you do not register your short-term, the failure of a short-term rental owner to obtain a permit in accordance to the provisions of this section within 15 days after the notice of non-compliance shall result in an administrative penalty of $500. This is an encouragement to go ahead and get registered. We give them 15 days. If they still are out of compliance, then we will issue a ticket to them and fine them an administrative penalty of $500. Any of the council have a question on this?
No, I like the changes. I would note, let's monitor to see how the enforcement and penalties go with the $500, because another option, some of them may make 500 in a weekend, so that may not be punitive, but Mr. Hatcher and I discussed potentially preventing them from being able to get their license for like 3 months or something, which is a real loss of income. But let's monitor it and see, because I
think that's a good thing.
Yeah, either way, just to see.
We do have David Hatcher, our Chief Code Enforcement Officer. David, how many registrations have we gotten so far?
Want to go here?
Yeah.
So far we have 103 applications. I can give you the breakdown. I got the data if you want it. You want to see it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And more than the numbers, you've got them broken.
I actually have a map that shows you where they are so far if you want it. Yeah. Get prepared here. There's 103 so far today. So far, 87 of those are non-owner occupied, 11 are owner occupied. We have 5 that are still kind of in the workflow. We have 10 applications that we know of that are being held up because of the parking issue that we're hoping that if this gets approved, that'll get those moving again.
How many?
10 that we know of. And then we have, I know, like the big, like Mr. Bergman, I think he's got 85 properties, but he's only submitted 40 so far. So I know he's got another 40 or so coming. So I know we have a lot more, coming soon. But that gives you kind of that map shows you where they're at. I did the numbers, by district. There's 37 in District 1, 18 in District 2, 32 in District 3, and 7 in District 4 so far. So that's kind of the data that we have.
Yeah.
Obviously, that changes every day as more registered, but that's where we're at.
David, let me ask you something. I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead.
where you
Go
going?
ahead.
So this last item, for the 15 days before you get the penalty, is our communication kind of portal to these property owners that have the short-term rentals? Do you think that 15 days, they'll be able to get it and respond quick enough? Because we're starting to hear a lot from property owners that, 45 days goes by when we get a code enforcement violation, and they say, well, we didn't realize it until 45 days later. The root of it, we want to have local representation that can get that quick contact. Do you think that the way we are setting this up, we will be able to communicate quickly with these short-term rental owners? I guess because they have their information with Airbnb and all that, there's a quicker line of communication than, say, just a normal rental permit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I believe we'll be able to communicate with them quickly. I would probably dispute some of those claims that it takes 45 days for notices. I know I've seen the complaints and we do get them. But we always send notices to whatever they give us on file to send notices to. So if they don't get the notice, that's not necessarily on us. But we would certainly, with this 15-day notice, for the short-term rentals, we would have to go based on whatever, because we won't have an application already from them. So we have to go with whatever information we can find through the assessor's office, or once we get a third-party vendor in place and they can give us a list of addresses with contact info, then we have to rely on that.
Would we be willing to contact them via text, other ways? Phone call, other than a letter, email, text, something else, some additional layers so that.
Yeah, certainly if we have that information available to us,
Okay.
we certainly could, yeah.
Okay.
I will say that sounds like something that we may not have the capacity to do until we get the vendor on.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
That, in mass quantities, yes, but we will get the occasional complaint from a neighborhood that, hey, this one's a short-term rental. We'll go ahead and address those individually, obviously, but, yeah, once we get the third-party vendor, then we can send, there might be tons of them that we're missing that we can send,
Because we'll have that log of through VRBO and
Yeah.
Airbnb.
Yes.
Okay.
Are we moving on third party?
Yes, I spoke to the chief. He said to go ahead and get with IT and, start getting that vendor
Very good.
lined up, so we're working on that.
Sir, did you have something you wanted to say?
Well, it's just in general, nothing specific to this, so I won't take up your time on these matters.
Sir, please go to the microphone and be sure to state your name for the record.
Well,
I don't have anything specific on these matters. I do have a general question that can wait to the end.
This may be.
Or you want me to go ahead and ask?
Go ahead now, we were at.
Okay, I represent South Meadowfield Neighborhood Association. And we're vitally concerned about the composition in our neighborhood, the owner-occupied versus the non-owner-occupied properties. The latter figure, the less healthy our neighborhood is. Okay, if that makes sense. So the more rentals we have, the less healthier our neighborhood is. So our first concern is there any kind of cap to the total number of properties that can be registered for short-term or long-term in the city limits?
No, sir.
Is there any consideration for such?
There had been consideration for a year and a half, but it did not get included in this particular piece of legislation.
The second thing I'd like to bring to discuss is the fact that this is a pro-business piece of legislation, ordinance. It is very pro-business, and don't have any problem with that. But it's to the deficit of neighborhoods. It's to the deficit of neighborhoods. So there needs to be some sort of balance. Now, unfortunately, there hasn't been a lot of public discussion. The Columbia Council of Neighborhoods is a very weak organization. It doesn't stand up for the neighborhoods. So neighborhoods got to stand up for themselves, and that's why I'm here today. I would have liked to have seen, and others in our neighborhood would have liked to see more public discussion, public input on this before this got, and I know it's been a year and a half.
We had lots of public input.
Okay. I didn't see any notice about any kind of public forum to discuss this.
Yes, sir, we had several.
You had several. Okay. Well, I missed that then. But I from here on forth, our neighborhood is going to have more of an active voice if we may.
Well,
Great, thank you.
Let me just comment that this is a start. This is not the ending of the regulation of short-term rentals. This ordinance gets it on the books. It gives us the ability to get data, as we just gotten from David, on where they are. And I think that the council in future months will look at that data, and if we do think that there is getting to be an imbalance in short-term rentals versus owner-occupied properties, I hope the council will be willing to take that issue up again. And I appreciate your neighborhood keeping the heat on the council, because in very few months, I'm going to be with your neighborhood, coming to the council meeting and getting my 3 minutes of talking.
Yeah.
And just to note, it looks like there's one currently registered in South Meadowfield, so we'll be sure to continue to look to get that accurate
Okay.
number as we go
Okay.
through, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that gives us a glimmer of hope. I do want to praise the council not being a Johnny-come-lately to this subject and getting on the books. I think that's very admirable. And I'm glad to hear that you're open to looking at it as an evolutionary ordinance.
Yeah. And for the record, would you give us your name, please?
It's Earl, E-A-R-L, Utsey, U-T-S-E-Y.
And Mr. Utsey, I just want to add to, just to expand on Mr. Duvall, we considered caps, but we were considering caps with no information.
Yeah.
So that is why we ended up not doing a cap and trying to get the data that David is collecting.
Right.
Because then there is the debate of how do you choose what the gap is going to be.
Yes.
And no one can make an informed decision without having the data.
And you know, I'm glad I showed up today because I feel more comfortable about what's going on, and partly because I'm informed.
Well, Earl, you and Nancy, you have my number, so y'all call me, all right? Thank you, sir.
And I know Mr. Utsey has my number.
Any questions from the council?
So I guess I would like to know the timeline. When is the registration deadline?
About September 4th is when we're expecting them to be registered.
Okay, you feel, do we know in general ballpark how many short-term rentals are within the city?
Based on the data we had from, like the free data we could find from the vendors prior to starting all this, they were saying anywhere from 500 to 600.
So we're at 100 now?
Yes.
You think we can get 400 registered in the next 3 weeks, or should we?
I think we're gonna have to do a press release soon. I was kind of waiting to see what this is, if we need to include this information in that release, but, no, I think we need, I'm gonna put a press release out.
Well, let's
soon to
do a
remind
couple
people.
layers. Just a suggestion of the press release, but let's get the data and the data contact information.
Okay.
And do a several layer approach of a general text, a reminder, maybe an email, any of that data that is provided from the short-term rental companies. Let's just push it hard, not with just a mailer or something, but.
But that's what I need clarity on too. Initial notification, did we send something out or are we relying on public channels? Because I don't know if we had the data to contact them on the front end.
We don't know where they are, so we don't have any letters to send out. We haven't
Yeah, so
posted, we
letters-
did.
So we need to capture that
social.
data
Yeah.
through them.
The problem with that is that they're not gonna have that data by September 4th, so it'll be a work, we'll continue to work that as we get the data.
In my opinion, I think that the industry, people like David know where they are, and they're saving their $250 until closer to the 1st of September.
That's fine. But I mean, if come September 4th and 180 people have signed up, then I think we gotta look at some sort of extension or
Yeah,
something.
I think that we will have higher numbers. by
Okay,
September.
but it's just something that we need to consider closer to that date.
One quick question, David, so the Harbison area doesn't have any that have applied?
I know I just showed the main part of town. I don't think there were any out there. Maybe one. I know I did see one like out in the Wood Creek Farm area, but I don't, the majority of them are right here. I can get you specific.
Well, now, only if it's one out there, but Wood Creek is not me.
We gotta have a public hearing on the fee.
Oh, on the fee.
Okay, so next step would be to pass this back up to city council.
On consensus, yeah.
Yes.
Consensus is,
Sounds good.
General consensus of the committee is to send it back to city council and to start the advertising
Thanks, David.
process and public hearing process for the $500 fee that we've added. Do I hear a motion from Councilman Brennan, seconded by Councilman Herbert
Motion to approve.
to adjourn?
Thank you.